All right, welcome back on this historic day in Washington, D.C. as the 116th Congress prepares to swear in. Much of the focus is on Nancy Pelosi and her second turn as House Speaker. But there are other Democrats the president needs to worry about, and they're not running for the 2020 nomination. New York's Jerry Nadler, California's Adam Schiff, and Maryland's Elijah Cummings have all been ranking members on high-profile House committees. These three men will take chairmanships and with it the power to investigate the president. Now, as Democrats prepare to take their places and open investigations, let's look at where the oversight power comes from. Article 1 of the Constitution lays out the duties and powers of Congress, and while it covers everything from minting money to punishing piracy on the high seas, there's no mention of congressional investigations. But the founders did get a chance to address this issue, because in 1791, during the very first Congress, Arthur St. Clair, Major General Arthur St. Clair, he was a general in the Revolution. He led troops into what is now Ohio, losing 700 men in a battle with Native Americans. Well, the House formed a committee to investigate the incident. The first time an official under the president's direct supervision was investigated. That's according to House archives. Now, at first, President George Washington was uneasy about handing over documents and files and witnesses to the House committee, unsure if the House even had the authority to investigate. But Washington consulted his cabinet, drawing agreement from bitter political foes Thomas Jefferson and then Secretary of State Alexander Hamilton, who was the Secretary of the Treasury, that the investigation was legitimate. St. Clair was ultimately cleared, but the precedent for House investigation had been set. Now, through the 20th century, the investigative powers of Congress have been asserted and brought down a corrupt Interior Secretary during the 1920s Teapot Dome scandal and investigated presidential misconduct in the Watergate hearings, leading to President Nixon's resignation. Now, Maryland Congressman Elijah Cummings prepares to head the newly renamed Oversight and Reform Committee. Adam Schiff is getting ready to control the Intelligence Committee, and New York's Jerry Nadler is set to chair the Judiciary Committee. All three will have the power to bring investigations looking into the president, into his appointees, and more. Joining me now, Toronto Star Washington Bureau Chief Daniel Dale and Los Angeles Times White House reporter Eli Stokols. Welcome to both of you. Daniel, I noticed something you wrote, or I don't know if you wrote it or you tweeted it, but I saw something you wrote that said the party's over for Donald Trump because he's been enjoying a Republican majority that hasn't actually taken its oversight responsibility seriously.
Yeah, the Republican majority showed no interest in seriously scrutinizing the Trump administration. And now it's a whole different ballgame. You know, it's not just the three individuals whose faces you just put on the screen, although they will be crucial. It's everybody, including Maxine Waters, a congresswoman that Trump has disparaged repeatedly, who has promised to investigate his relationship with Deutsche Bank. The Veterans Affairs Committee will be able to look into just what's going on with the VA and the three Mar-a-Lago members who appear to be controlling some of the agency's decision-making. So it's his own finances, it's the activities of his cabinet members who have escaped scrutiny. And I think what will be different now is a lot of the scandals that many liberal Democratic voters have been frustrated have just disappeared because Trump buries them with ever more scandals, will now last longer, I think, because there is someone outside the media in the form of the Democratic congressional majorities who will now have the power to keep them going with subpoenas, with investigations.
Eli, what are you hearing from the White House about how far Nancy Pelosi will let these powerful chairmen go in their investigation? She's got to walk this tight line, this tightrope. She said she's going to wait for the Mueller investigation, but Jerry Nadler told me the other day, first order of business is get Matt Whitaker, the acting attorney general, to testify before his committee. Adam Schiff feels the House Intel Committee didn't do its job under Republicans. So how does Nancy Pelosi manage this?
Well, that's the tightrope that Nancy Pelosi has to walk. I mean, as you point out, President Trump and his administration are giving House Democrats a lot to work with when it comes to their oversight authority that they will have now. And the issue for Pelosi is she understands, obviously, that her new majority comes largely from voters who wanted Democrats to serve as some sort of check on this White House, and yet she's also very aware of not overplaying that hand, of being sober and straightforward and following the facts and not appearing to be politically motivated, because what we've seen all along from this White House when it comes to answering criminal investigations, the Mueller probe, charges from Democrats, he dismisses everything as being political. It's always a political response to these investigations. And it won't be any different with the new investigations that the House Democrats bring. And he will be able to say, look, they're the Democrats, this is all politics. And he might have an easier case to make just because they all have D's after their names than what he's been trying to do in terms of broad brushing everything that Mueller and the Southern District of New York come back with. And so that's where Trump will be coming from in terms of trying to prejudice the country against whatever results come out of these things to sort of inoculate himself preemptively. And I think Nancy Pelosi will have to be very careful because they were elected to unearth a lot of these answers and to provide oversight. And yet heading into a presidential election, they do not want to appear overzealous or overly motivated by politics.
So that's a tricky one, Daniel, how not to overplay their hand. You heard Nancy Pelosi telling Savannah Guthrie that, look, if we move toward impeachment, it can't be political. It's got to be for legal reasons after the Mueller report comes out. There are certainly a lot of Democrats out there, a lot of Americans who want the Democrats to move forward with what feels like a political agenda. How does Nancy Pelosi manage to do that and not make the Democrats a foil for Donald Trump?
I think no matter what she does, she will become a foil to at least some extent. But I think it will be hard for the president to make her a more effective foil than she has already been over the last number of years, because the president and his administration have given the Democrats so much meat to work with. You know, it's harder to make an investigation or a subpoena look politically motivated if it's obviously trivial. And I think the thing with the Trump administration is that there's so much real stuff to investigate. You know, why were troops deployed to the border to deal with a smallish caravan? What was going on with Scott Pruitt? What was going on with Ryan Zinke? What the heck happened with the response to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico? So I think if the Democrats exercise oversight over these matters, I don't think it's a very effective argument, at least in the eyes of most of the population, if the president says that this is all politics. This is real stuff.